Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving into a completely fascinating explainer that is going to totally reframe how you think about the purpose of Zen and meditation. Together, we're going to look at how the source material strips away all those mystical elements we usually hear about and applies this ancient framework to how we process the modern world every single day.
Okay, let's dive into this, because I've got to ask you this directly right off the bat. Does meditation actually give you superpowers? Does it make you magically immune to suffering? A lot of people seem to think that if you just sit in silence long enough, you'll turn into some kind of enlightened super saiyan, Like all the worldly noise completely disappears and your mind just goes blissfully blank. But as our source material today reveals, that is a massive misunderstanding of what the practice is actually built to do.
So here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start by unpacking the meditation superpower myth, then introduce what's known as the human filter. Next, we'll compare matter versus meaning, look at the necessity of rules, and finally uncover the true value of Zen. Starting with Section 1, the meditation superpower myth, and the concept of accepting the obvious. Moving right along to Section 2, the human filter. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. Think about stepping outside on a freezing, blustery day. On one hand, we have the raw physical phenomena, literally just wind and temperature. That's simply nature doing its thing. But almost instantly, our brains jump to the human filter, right? We shiver and label it, wow, it's too cold, this weather is awful, I'm miserable, that wind howling is so annoying. The actual friction and conflict in our lives don't come from the wind itself. They come directly from the stories and labels we just slapped onto it. Which brings us to Section 3, matter versus meaning. Let's bring this down to earth with a really tangible example. Take the samyo, which are the traditional work clothes worn by monks. Now, human common sense dictates that this is highly respectful clothing. It absolutely must be worn properly. But what happens if we strip away that societal filter? Well, it's just raw cloth. Physically speaking, the universe doesn't stop you from wadding it up, using it as a seat cushion, or even a cleaning rag. It is strictly our shared societal image that makes treating it that way seem offensive or lacking in common sense. Here is another great example. Think of a stuffed teddy bear. Human social rules say this is a toy, a representation of a living thing that you should treat gently. If you take that bear and throw it across the room or punch it, people are going to think you're behaving terribly. But if we strip away the human filter, it is merely bear-shaped matter moving through physical space. The universe literally doesn't care if it gets thrown. Only the human filter cares. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these phenomena scale from simple physics all the way up to really complex behaviors. An apple dropping? That's just physics. Adding paint to an apple? That's just applying pigment. But humans apply the label of poison apple or say it's bad. As we move into more complex human actions, you'll see these filters become so much more rigid, and our attachment to them grows incredibly strong. The source material brings up a really fundamental biological example to test this concept out. Biologically speaking, excretion is just a bodily function. A human walks into a room, leaves waste, and walks out. That is the raw matter of the situation. Gendered restrooms, however, are a human rule. Physically, the act of using a restroom is completely identical regardless of who performs it or which room they use. The text points out that the division between the rooms is entirely a socially constructed filter. Our source also uses a fascinating anecdote about a homeless man in a park who was asked by police to move along. The man argued back, saying, "Who decided this land belongs to you? The land belongs to the earth." Now, looking at this through the lens of pure raw matter, he's completely and fundamentally correct. The earth obviously has no property lines drawn on it, but looking through the lens of human society, his argument is entirely unworkable. So that leads us nicely into Section 4, the necessity of rules. Now, you might be wondering, if everything is just raw matter, why don't we just live like that? Well, actually, scratch that, because if we did, we would completely fail as a species. In Buddhist thought, there is a specific term for the filters we absolutely need, funbitsu. It basically translates to the cognitive act of categorization, creating boundaries and discriminating between things. Think about a newborn baby. They have zero funbitsu. They don't know the boundary between food and poison, which is why a toddler will happily try to eat a handful of dirt. As we grow into adults, we rely heavily on this categorization to survive, to build a functioning society, and to protect ourselves. We absolutely need these rules. But here is where the friction really starts. Let's look at how our society rapidly escalates its categorization. Level 1, we divide restrooms by gender.
This creates a basic societal order that most people historically agreed upon just to keep things functioning smoothly.
Moving to level 2, the source notes that as society grows and evolves, we recognize much more diverse human experiences. So, we create new categories, like those under the LGBT umbrella, to organize, understand, and protect people. But then we hit level 3. The text argues that as we create endless subcategories, navigating incredibly complex questions about shared spaces and individual identities, we inevitably breed new friction. According to this framework, making life manageable through categorization is totally necessary, but endlessly dividing things up means our subjective images or filters are constantly clashing. Essentially, the more categories we make, the more arguments we have over those exact categories.
Finally, we've made it to Section 5, the true value of Zen.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a practical, everyday solution. When you find yourself caught in a really heated conflict, the text suggests following these steps. Step 1, notice that you are likely just arguing over clashing images or filters, not actual reality. Step 2, actively strip away the human story you've attached to the situation. And step 3, observe the raw matter. A restroom is just a room for biological functions. A bear is just stuffed fabric. By just taking a second to pause and observe raw reality, you almost instantly diffuse the emotional weight of the argument. There is such a striking perspective from the text here. Quote, meditation is simply about remembering how things actually are before we added our stories to them. It isn't magic, guys. It's a structured practice of essentially taking off the VR headset of human society for just a few moments to remember that underneath the whole shebang, it's really just wind, temperature, cloth, and land. So the crucial point is this. Zen and meditation do not give you magic powers, and they absolutely don't deny that human suffering exists. Instead, they provide a systematic, grounded way to momentarily strip away the exhausting human filters we all wear every single day. By returning your perspective to that raw physical baseline, you drastically reduce the friction you feel against the world and the people in it. You still play by society's rules, but you no longer let them emotionally destroy you. I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Think about the absolute biggest stressor or conflict in your life right this very second. Ask yourself, what human filter are you placing over that problem? And what would that problem look like if you just stripped away the story and looked at the raw matter? Thank you so much for exploring this source material with me today. Keep learning, keep questioning your filters, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.